Hey everyone, and welcome to Scouting the League. 15 days away from round one of the 2026 NFL draft. So, a perfect time to check in with lead draft writer for NFL.com, Eric Edholm. We talk prospects, draft expectations, and more. Plus, Aaron Rodgers, Maxx Crosby, and perhaps the Indiana Bears. Feels weird saying it, but it's a really fun conversation. So make sure you buckle up for this one. Before we jump in, though, make sure you head over, like, subscribe, share this podcast wherever you're listening and watching. Hit those buttons. That subscribe one is the big one, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Help us out. Let us know you're listening and share this with a friend. I, of course, am Rodrik David. At Right Step ADV is where you can find me. Website rsafootball.com to read everything about all I do in the football world. Neil Stratton is along for the ride today. He is at Inside the League on Twitter. And of course, Eric Edholm is at Eric_Edholm. Check the show notes for everything there. If you're a scout or aspiring scout, make sure you check out thescoutingcommunity.com for everything you need to know, all the resources that we're going to get you to help move that scouting industry forward. And make sure you check out our partner over at bluemaca.com. Code SCOUTING20 for a discount and to let them know we sent you. Support us in every way you can. We love to hear from you as we continue our walk towards the draft. Our draft talk continues next week with Dane Brugler. Make sure you have your notifications set. And with that, let's go. Well, Eric Edholm is back with us here on Scouting the League as we are just 15 days away from the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft. Eric, your top 100 is set to come out very soon. By the time this releases, by the time our listeners are listening, it may be out. So make sure you go check out that top 100 as Eric is making his rounds. He is at Eric_Edholm. Eric, welcome back to Scouting the League.
Yeah, what's going on, you guys? I guess things have changed since we last talked.
A little bit.
Little bit, pro days have happened. Top 30 visits are flying. Free agency's done, which again, that always dictates a little bit of the way that that draft is going to go. We'll get to one team that's got a few extra firsts that they were not expecting, and one team is short an edge rusher. But let's start at a quarterback because it always starts at quarterback. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they have a question at quarterback. Again, they were connected to Shadir Sanders last year. Obviously, that didn't happen. Aaron Rodgers plays quarterback. This year, it's kind of been the Ty Simpson conversation. Again, you're sitting there. You're in the playoffs, which means you're down the board a little bit. But it all starts with Aaron Rodgers. Is Aaron Rodgers going to come back and play, or are we going to see him suited up for Coach McCarthy again this fall?
I keep thinking, yeah. I keep thinking, sure, it'll happen soon enough because it didn't seem like the level of panic is very high in Pittsburgh. Now, maybe they have watched enough Will Howard tape to convince themselves they've got a plan B on staff. Obviously, Mason Rudolph could step in if needed. So they're not in the worst situation possible. Obviously, if he doesn't come back, they'd probably be in the market to draft somebody just to have another arm and somebody that intrigues them. Probably not a day one pick, in my opinion. I don't think they're using the 21st pick I think they have. I just have a hard time seeing them go quarterback round one, but you never know. Things could surprise us, but I think he's going to say yes at some point in the next couple of weeks because he seems like he's willing to give them a shorter timeline and kind of give them the information prior to the draft, but I don't know that I could say it's like a 95% certainty every kind of day that goes by without much noise and with speculations, what their other plans could be. As those go on more and more, I start to think maybe he's done. But
yeah,
I still feel like the way that McCarthy and Rodgers have talked and be a nice way to kind of put a bow on both of their careers in a way to work one more year together, that it's going to happen in the end. We'll see.
Yeah.
Eric, where did you land on Will Howard in last year's draft? Was it last year's draft, I think?
Yeah, last year, right? Yeah. Obviously the playoff run seemed to kind of help him quite a bit. I got to see him at K-State and kind of felt like this is an NFL quarterback. I don't know what level of NFL quarterback he is, but he had the size, had a little bit of athleticism. Kind of has the same body type as Fernando Mendoza, a big strapping kid who can move a little bit. Not a true runner like Josh Allen, but somebody who has some ability to escape the rush and get out of the pocket, and a good enough arm, not a cannon, not a howitzer, but a quality arm, I think, or above average, whatever you want to say. Certainly the combine throwing session was one of the weirdest ones I think I've seen in a while with Howard. There were a few passes that were just airmailed. Like usually when you see those guys, in shorts throwing to receivers against the air, they're pretty close, right? A guy can dirt one or overthrow it a little, or they might be on different pages as far as the route and stuff. That happens, but like he had enough throws way off target that I thought, is something going on? I don't know what's happening here. Now I don't know how much that matters in the big picture, but it was very odd to me. But a lot of traits that I liked and thought, were worth developing. And I think he got picked around where I would have, been interested in picking him.
Yeah. Yeah. Will Howard, again, had that pedigree. Really the reason Ohio State brought him in, you saw all of it on the playoff run. Again, whether the backup quarterback, who is oftentimes the best player on your football team, is that guy that you haven't yet seen on the field.
Yeah.
Again, there's that element of it. Mike McCarthy, is that a positive for Aaron Rodgers or not? Again, they do have history. All that to say, you led with it. The Steelers, no panic. They are an organization that operates really the same way. You're going to punch the clock. You're going to go to work. That's part of what Pittsburgh's done. So, again, This is a franchise that they have a plan. They are very closed door, tight lip, even among the scouts out there on the road. They are a hard one to get a gauge on. And, again, I fully expect them to, just keep that up. And, again, as we get away from the Steelers, now we're going to stay in division. There was a trade that fell through. I don't know if you guys remember that. Again, 2 first rounds. Baltimore goes historic trades, not just 1, but 2 first round picks for Maxx Crosby from Vegas. Falls through because of the medical. Again, that story died quickly. Is Maxx Crosby happy in Vegas? Is there any chance he's on the move again here prior to anything happening? Is he going to be suiting up for the silver and black?
Yeah, I kind of tend to think that, it felt a little forced at first when both sides are like, oh yeah, we're glad this worked out the way it did. On one hand, I'm sure the Raiders didn't want to trade him. Like obviously the more good players you have, the better foundation you have, the closer you are to competing. And especially with a new quarterback coming in, you want to support staff behind him and all that. But I think they felt compelled based on the price, like 2 first rounders. That's also a good thing to help rebuild too. So, cost control, there's a lot of factors there that made sense for that. But I think they probably did it reluctantly at first. And then when it fell through, they thought, maybe this is a sign from God that we shouldn't be getting rid of good players. And especially for a franchise that's been so down big picture in the last couple decades. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's like 80-20 or more that he stays a Raider. Now that could change. I mean, Micah Parsons was obviously traded in August. That thing escalated fast, it felt like. Trade deadline is a couple months later. That certainly is another milestone. You have to, another tentpole event in the NFL calendar where if things aren't going well, team's still struggling, Crosby hasn't shown a willingness to be part of the. I don't know. I mean, he's such a team guy. It's hard to imagine that they would do anything to hurt the franchise. But you never know, right? I could see it at that point. But for now, I think start of the season, I think he's a Raider.
Yeah,
Eric, based on where we are right now and what we expect to happen the last weekend in April, what grade would you give the Raiders for their off season? There's been a lot of developments there. Spent a lot of money in free agency. Hired a head coach, look like they're gonna have an interesting quarterback. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously last year was a pretty busy one for them too, right? Got Pete Carroll, got Geno Smith, made a lot of moves, and everybody was like, hey, obviously Ashton Jenney was probably the Jeremiah Love, the popular guy. Some people thought he might have been the pound for pound the best pick in the draft last year. So on the one hand, I think, yeah, they made some good pickups. They needed more depth at receiver. They needed more depth on the offensive line. Paying Linderbaum what they did, completely resetting the center market. I mean, a contract that I don't know that there's a comp for based from another position where you say, okay, he doubled the APY of the next highest paid guy. I mean, that's big, right? So the Cousins contract obviously is really interesting too, or just bringing him on and paying him what they are for a year. But I'd still need quite a bit of help defensively, even with Walker and what Kwity Paye. Nakobe Dean was a good pickup. Teron Johnson, but still, I think, the more impact guys they get, I just feel like there aren't, outside of Crosby, you can count the number of true blue chippers because, Quay Walker, I think you'd say is an ascending player, but I don't know that he'd say he's totally established. Same with Kwity Paye. I don't know that I could say that about him. Nakobe Dean, I would say, is like a starter. But I would want another pressure player, another D tackle at least, if not two. A lot to do. So I give him a B in the way that I'm kind of hedging. Obviously, we're kind of baking in Mendoza, I think, to that grade a little, but it's easy to be excited. Hard not to look back at last year and remember that a lot of flurry of changes doesn't always mean good things are coming.
But if we had this conversation in a year, are we saying the Raiders made the right choice at head coach or no?
I don't know enough about Clint to really say. I don't know that I have a great feel for him. Obviously, being in the spotlight in the playoffs and helping Sam kind of unlock something. Now obviously Kevin O'Connell did the same thing the year before, but I went into the season kind of wondering, what kind of offense is this? Is this paying Cooper Kupp what they did and trading DK away? I was kind of like, I don't know, man. But Clint really did bring the thing together. A couple of years ago, obviously, his stock kind of took a big hit. And then all of a sudden, now he's back on the mountaintop. And that's how quickly the car wash can kind of, cleanse some guys. And so I'm hopeful. I think he's said some of the right things, I think, but I don't know that I have a great feel and haven't really asked people specifically about him, but I'm willing to be patient with him. Obviously, the Pete Carroll move, you expected, a baseline of success. That just didn't happen, and they moved on. I think that was the right move, though. So they're taking the right approach, I think, and it's a pretty good candidate for a team that's got as many warts as it does.
Yeah, it's a tough one to step into because, again, for all the positive that you can point to, if nothing else, you've got 6 games in division that are not easy games. I mean, that is, again, you've got to point to that one as, if not the toughest, one of the top ones in the NFL. Again, you get the Broncos twice, the Chiefs, we fully expect to bounce back, and the Chargers are going to give everybody fits. So, if nothing else, you're stepping into a buzzsaw on that division. Now, again, we'll see where it all shakes out. Does somebody regress? That's all part of it. But again, the Raiders are going to be an interesting one to watch, certainly. And as we keep on rolling through it, one more before we get to these 2026 draft prospects. Again, another grinder of a division, the NFC North, and potentially the Indiana Bears. Like, there's no way it sounds right. There's no way it can happen, right? But here we are. We're getting down to it. Arlington Heights or Indiana. Eric, you're there. You're a Chicago guy. You're on the ground. What is your sense? Is this a game of chicken, or, hey, could this really end up happening?
Yeah, I think it is a game of chicken, but that doesn't guarantee that the Bears are going to get the desired result. I think it's good for them that Indiana stepped up with the money and the funding right away. Basically, they're $1 billion for a dome stadium in Hammond, Indiana. The Bears contributing a big chunk as well, about double that. It's a pretty clean deal. I will say that. It's a nice thing to have in your hand if you're negotiating, right? You have a pretty good looking bird that has a lot of very few loose ends and a lot of positive attributes. So what they hoped was they could go back and leverage and negotiate against Illinois and say, hey, look what Indiana's offering us. It hasn't been quick, though. It really hasn't happened fast. And the Bears have kind of said, we want to make a decision by spring, summer. Like, as soon as this draft is over, their immediate focus turns to that. Remember last year, I think it was last year. I don't remember when it was exactly, but they were announcing stadium plans on draft day. It was no, it was 2 years ago. It was when Caleb was, they had the 1st and 9th pick in the draft. Everybody is celebrating Caleb Williams Day in Chicago. And, kind of like the Raiders will with Fernando Mendoza in a couple Thursdays from now. And the Bears sent out this statement. It was like, kind of ruined everything. Like, wow, this thing isn't going to happen. They bought this massive plot in Arlington Heights, or Arlington Racetrack, where the horses used to race. A great place, actually. 300 plus acres. Like, it's a big facility. It would be, actually farther away from Chicago than Hammond, Indiana would be, like, as the crow flies, which is kind of interesting. But it would be probably the best case scenario. I think right now, though, given how strong the offer in Indiana is and how Illinois' politics have held this thing up, they don't have the 60 votes. The vote's been delayed multiple times. It's been stalled in Springfield, the state capital. I think you have to say it's like 55. I'll say 55-43 Indiana, and then the 2% would be staying in Soldier Field. I just don't think that's happening. The team has basically said it's not happening. I think the city has not stepped up to the plate. So I would say right now you have to lean Indiana as the strong possibility, with Illinois as a pretty likely fallback option.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wild one. You can't imagine, again, they keep their headquarters in Chicago so they can stay the Chicago Bears. Do they become just the Bears? We had just the Washington football team, so why not just the Bears?
Midwest football team. Out. That's what their new name's going to be.
Yeah. So again, it becomes a wild situation as we get close to it. Again, fully expect something right around draft time, and again, a Bears team that has everything kind of going in the right direction. You don't want a stadium, hold up like this, making everything a little bit goofy and crazy. But
real quick, the location inside Hammond is called Wolf Lake. So if we could get Wolf Lake Bears, I think that would have a nice ring to it. Go for the nature theme. I'm telling you, it's leaning towards Indiana at this point, unless Illinois steps up.
Yeah, well, we'll find out where it all goes, and let's get to 2026. Again, we are 15 days away. It seems like the number one pick is set. Fernando Mendoza, he has his pro day. Again, there's always going to be the people that want to crush him, that want to love him. Sounded like he checked the boxes again. Fernando Mendoza, are there any concerns? Is there any chance he does not end up going number one overall to the Raiders?
Can't see it. I mean, unless some team just comes in and throws some, sort of grand godfather offer at him, and like, this is what we're doing. And I did a fun exercise on one of those trade simulators. I tried to be the Raiders and trade down as many times as I could. I got to about 13 trades and couldn't go farther. That's the point of draft season we're at now. But yeah, no, I don't think there's a team that's dying, even in a 1 quarterback class or a 1.5 quarterback class, depending on what you think of Ty Simpson. I mean, I just don't see it. I don't know. I mean, and this is not an anti-Mendoza, propaganda here. I just think that, he's a high enough ceiling prospect that the Raiders should be pretty happy getting him. I don't know that he offers, high enough floor is what I meant to say. I don't know that he offers quite the ceiling that, I mean, maybe he's the Tom Brady equation, like where his intangibles are just off the charts. His tangibles are good enough, and he wins just because he's so good at what he does. That's what they're clearly banking on, but I don't know that everybody sees that as the likelihood. If he was in the same class as Caleb and Drake May and Jaden Daniels, I'd probably list him fourth, ahead of some of those other guys in that class, but below them. So yeah, I just think it's Vegas at this point.
Yeah. Do you have a comp for him, Eric?
I've been kind of saying like people ask, like, what do you think he can be? Like, what's his? And I think if you put it in tiers and kind of have him somewhere, like his peak would be in that Jared Goff, Sam Darnold tier. Goff doesn't really use his athleticism that much. He's a pretty good athlete, I think, but Sam will maybe use it a little bit more. And it's, rolling out and getting away from rushers and stuff like that. And, but, physically speaking, maybe has a little more talented arm, but not as consistent. Whereas Goff can, play to play, snap to snap. You know what to expect. Pocket passer, mostly delivering strikes and all that. So I would say that's the kind of tier I think he lives up to. Somebody a while back said Sam Bradford, the Oklahoma quarterback, and I like that one a lot. Like a good competitor, good, well-built athlete, good arm. Again, nothing mind-blowing, but had Sam Bradford been healthy and not suffered, two major knee injuries and other stuff along the way, I believe he would have been a good starting quarterback. And there were some moments in his career where he just wasn't able to physically do it.
Yeah. Well, at that pro day, a bunch of other guys performed. Again, good quarterbacks need good wideouts. Again, we got two of them here on this Indiana roster, Cooper and Surratt. Both guys, again, how high are these guys going to go that, again, help bring that national title to Bloomington?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting with Cooper. I mean, we've all kind of, I would say he probably has a chance in the back half of round one. But how high can he go? What's his like? Would the Jets like him at 16? Is that the sort of the peak for him? Maybe. When I watched him, I kind of thought early day 2 pick, like without knowing who would come out and everything. I just sort of thought like top 50, top 60. I don't know about first round, but there seems to be a possibility that he could sneak into the last 10 or 12 picks of round one. So that seems to be that 25 to 40 range would be where he's going to go. Surratt, I would say, is more of a round 3 pick, if I had to guess. He's not real sudden, but boy, he's reliable. I mean, he's a good guy to have. I don't think he's ever gonna be a massive yards after the catch guy. The big play potential is just okay. I don't think it's very good. But yeah, he's very reliable, good in the red zone, strong kid, athletic, but just doesn't have that extra burst. So yeah, I would say round 3 or 4 to me makes sense.
He becomes that number 3 wide out again, starter in the NFL, reliable, but you better, he's a 3 closer to a 4 than he is 3 closer to a 2 or 1.
Yeah.
Again, if you start losing those top guys, the other guy, one guy on the other side of the ball there, again, kind of one of the intriguing guys of this draft. Is he a first rounder? Everything but his size says yes. D'Angelo Pons ran well. Other than his size, again, he becomes the Ruben Bain conversation at DB, has answered every question, but the size, again, it'll always go back to that. Again, historically small. What are you hearing about Pons? Does he have a chance to make it kind of into that end of day one? Hey, he's just a good football player we can't pass up.
I can't think of a guy his size that went at that position that went round 1. Maybe I'm sure there is, but like it's almost always starts like the 33rd pick is where, and I think he's terrific. Like, I mean, I think the size question does limit his role. And I mean, there've been a lot of these guys over the last few years. There's always one where you're like, that's my undersized DB. That's my Mike Hilton. That's the guy that I'll pound the table for. He's clearly that guy in this class. Why am I not thinking of some of the other ones? Yeah, I mean, there've been a few. One of them went to Tennessee a couple years ago and has been okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there are exceptions at defensive back, and if at the worst he's a nickel, I think playing outside at that length and such is going to be tough, right? I mean, Antoine Winfield could do it years ago. There aren't a whole lot of guys 5'9" and shorter who could play on the outside consistently, but man, he's a really good football player, and you can use him in a variety of ways too. And I think the slot is going to end up being his home. But if you need him to play outside a few snaps, I think he could probably do it. And I mean, the dude jumped 43.5 inches. That's like, that's his height. It's unbelievable, right? I mean, explosive athlete, urgent athlete, somebody who plays bigger than his size and will hold up if he can. And running that 40 only helps him. But first round, I don't know.
Yeah.
That seems high.
Are we at a point in the league where if you're under 6 feet, you're almost automatically a slot now as a corner?
It feels that way, doesn't it? Like if you're 30-inch arms or if you're 5'10" or shorter, it's like you just automatically get shoved inside. And, how many nickels do you need? I'm not saying that it's not an important position. I know it's a it's a starting position these days. But yeah, after a while, there's only so many guys that size I think you can carry on your roster. So, I mean, I'd have to do a little work and see like how many guys are truly playing the majority of their snaps outside who fall below those thresholds. I'd like to see what the numbers really are in the league.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, Pod's just good football player. Again, somebody's going to get a good football player. He's one of those guys because of his limitation size-wise. You hope he stays healthy. But again, he's going to make a bunch of plays. Somebody's going to be really happy to get
Yeah.
him. Again, have not heard any noise other than the size thing, which you can usually say, hey, pretty clean prospect the rest of the way, which is, again, what you really want. And again, he's going to be a fun one sitting there. Again, end of round 1, early round 2, he could be that guy going. And so again, that wraps us up. Again, Indiana's got a bunch of guys that'll be drafted throughout 3 days. But let's get past Indiana. After number 1, we've got questions all over the place. We got Arvell Reese, we've got Reuben Bain, we've got some offensive tackles who could fall in there. There's also a running back, Jeremiah Love, who's really good. Again, he showed up at the combine. Again, answered every question. Again, in kind of the day and age where some of these top guys clear number 1 at his position, you don't have to do everything. He's, again, answered the bell.
Yeah.
Could he be in play at number 2? How high is his ceiling? Where do you think Jeremiah Love could end up going?
Yeah, I think the soonest would be probably Arizona at 3, Tennessee at 4. That's probably where it starts with him. And there's been a lot of Giants buzz at number 5. That's been a team that, I kind of thought would go defense. But after talking to some people, I think Love is in play there. I think he's a real possibility. What did some scouts say to me about, I said something like, yeah, Scattaboo, and he said, Scattaboo's here for a good time. He's not here for a long time. I thought that was perfect because it works on multiple levels, right? So yeah, you don't not draft Jeremiah Love because you have Cam Scattaboo. Let's put it that way. And Tracy and whoever else they have. I think they could have I think John wants to run the ball. So Baltimore Giants at 5 would be a possibility. And I think Washington at 7 is in play. I think the Jets be a tough one at 2. I'm not saying they couldn't. Obviously with Breece Hall there, would be really interesting to see what they did with him if they kept both. But yeah, I think 3, 4 maybe, because I don't know enough about what their plans are. But they've been pretty quiet, both teams. I'm not quiet in terms of moves, but quiet in terms of like letting information out. So I think the Giants and Washington at 7 are 2 to watch for sure. If he gets past that point, I don't know.
So you're telling me there's a low likelihood that Neil's New Orleans Saints are going to get Jeremiah Love this year?
I can tell you that I've had a hard time figuring out what exactly the Saints are going to do. They've been another team that it's been hard to get information out of, but with ATN and Kamara still there, they drafted Kendry Miller in the 3rd round a couple years ago. I don't know.
I mean, Eric, what are the odds he makes it to 8, regardless of whether the Saints like him or not? Is he making it out of 5?
I mean, it's possible. I think 5 to the Giants is probably where I'm going to put him in my mock. I don't know. I mean, things change, the next week and a half. But if I had to pick a spot that I think he'll end up in my mock, I think that's where I would go. If he doesn't, because I've heard the Giants also like Caleb Downs for good reason, then Washington at 7 would be my next choice if I had to guess. But I had Tennessee taking him at 4 previously. I think defense, they have to do a little more there. I know you want to surround Cam with as many playmakers as possible. I just kind of have a feeling that Robert's going to want to get a pass rusher and get him early.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you just mentioned again, another guy that we're going to talk about, Caleb Downs. Again, it answered all the questions during the season. Elite intangibles, playmaker, again, just a really easy one. But then combine happens and all of a sudden there's a rumor floated about a knee injury. That died down quickly. again, sometimes again, an injury will pop up and it will linger, which again, maybe that's more, fire where the smoke's at. Again, I haven't heard anything about Caleb Downs' knee since really that week after the combine. You're talking again, a potential top 5 pick, a guy that's again, one of those, it's kind of become a theme for some of these guys. High floor, maybe the ceiling not of some other top 5, top 10 picks historically, but again, good football player. What do you think, Caleb Downs? Where does this guy end up going? What are you looking for with Caleb Downs?
Yeah, I think that's it's interesting. He weighed 208 at his pro day. That was clearly I think it was a little lower at the combine, and I think there was maybe a little bit of question of whether he had enough size for the position. He's almost 6', 208. That's a pretty good size for a safety. Like, I know everyone would love those 6'2", 218 pounders who can run sub 4.4s, but man, other than maybe the size mass question, he's got a lot of those things checked off pretty well. I think it's going to be scheme specific. Like, there are some systems where, obviously teams play a lot of 2 deep split safety looks and stuff these days. So how valuable is it? That's really the big question, is like, I'm not saying you don't need safeties. I'm just saying, do you need to invest a top 10 pick on a safety? That's really where teams are going to have a little hesitation. That's why I think the Giants might even have a higher grade. This is me speculating. I haven't gotten this from the Giants, but they could have a higher grade on Caleb Downs, but say that a running back is above them is above safety on the positional totem pole, if you will. So, yeah, I mean, I have a feeling he's gonna get to the Bengals at 10. Whether they take him or not, I don't know, and Dallas, a couple picks later, they wouldn't hesitate, I don't think, with all their needs. A lot of teams in that range would say, all right, the value question's off the table. Let's just get ourselves a really good safety.
Is there any concern? Have you heard anything about that knee again post combine that's going to cause him to slide and get down to those 20s?
I haven't heard that. And anytime you hear a rumor that, like, none of the top guys really jumped in on that one. I can't remember who had it originally, but like, you didn't see a lot of people backing it up or confirming it or whatever. And I had a former assistant there that I used to go to with those kinds of questions. We're working at a different school now, so that pipeline is dried up a little. But it's too bad, because when I heard it, I immediately thought of him, and I said, "Oh, he's not coached there anymore." Which, with all the movement in college football, it takes you a second to remember where everybody is. But I haven't heard anything to back it up. I don't know his agent all that well, but we've talked before, and I should probably put in a courtesy call there. But yeah, I don't know.
Eric, if you are a team that has problems in its secondary, there's some cornerbacks that are going in the first round, and there's Caleb Downs. Is Downs the guy that can probably have the biggest impact on your secondary quickliest, or is it better to get, or is there the kind of shutdown core in this draft where you could say, man, this guy could really neutralize the other team's best receiver? I mean, that's kind of a hazy question, but what are your thoughts there?
It's a good question, though. I really think so, especially now that we know Jermod McCoy from Tennessee. He's worked out. He ran a sub 4.40, missed all of last season. The timeline for him has been stretched out quite a bit. That's gonna concern some people. Even after that workout, I've heard there's at least one that I'm aware of. I probably shouldn't say who it is, but a team picking in that range that you're seeing him go, kind of the middle of the first round, early part of the first round, that sort of area, top 15, 16, 18 picks. A team that's been connected to him a lot, I think, has some worries about him. So there's that factor, even after the good pro day. Mansour Delane, I don't think you would have watched him at Virginia Tech and said, oh, this is a future first round pick. I'm not downplaying what he did last year. He was terrific. Every time you flipped on the tape, it was him shutting somebody down. I don't think he allowed more than 3 catches in a game this year. I don't think he had a penalty. Make sure I have that right. I could be wrong, but very clean football and, ran the sub 440, did what he, checked off a lot of boxes for a guy who isn't huge. To me, he's McDuffie all over again, like that very instinctive, highly competitive, really good football player who, compensates more than enough for his shortcomings. So, I guess that's the one guy that I'm considering how tough it is to find good corners. I would probably take him over Downs if I had needs in both spots. If all things being equal, again, that's a tough question to answer, but it's a good question because it forces you to put yourselves in the shoes of GMs and put yourselves in the shoes of evaluators who are thinking more than just one dimensionally. Do you want an apple or an orange? That's an easy question. Now, do you want an apple or an orange knowing that you just ate this and you're going to eat this later and you have a stomach issue with acid? And that's how the draft is. It's not a linear thing, in my opinion. So Delane fascinates me, but man, Caleb Downs is too good to last too long, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, you get guys like Malik Muhammad out of Texas, who I'm a big fan of his. You've got Avion Terrell, who's got the bloodlines. Again, you've got some, that corner group it kind of feels like that end of round one. We're going to see a run of them in round two because, again, they're going to get pushed down as everybody goes to the trenches. And we're going to get into the trenches here in just a second. But again, these guys, again, the positional value thing is, again, probably talked about more on the outside than it is in draft rooms. Cause again, it's easy to look up. All right, this guy's got this grade and this guy's got this grade. Again, forget everything else. These guys are going to make our team better. Now, again, what do we need? What does the rest of our roster look like? Again, everything plays a factor. It's not linear in any way, but again, we do a really good job muddying it up on the outside. But again, it's fun to talk about. And again, at the end of the day, teams that draft good football players, you draft starters, you're going to be doing just fine. And again, in the secondary, again, scheme certainly matters for some of these guys when you start talking man, press, off, too high. Again, all of it matters. So again, always going to be fun to see what these teams do. But again, let's get to the trenches. This is a guy from Arizona State that Eric, I know you have been a fan of for a while. Big Max INH, or again, he had a nice contingent down at the Arizona State Pro Day. Again, is this guy a first rounder? Is this guy a top 20? Where do you think, again, the big right tackle ends up going?
Yeah. My first, the first time I saw him was watching David Bailey tape, probably in December or something. And I think he had just committed to the Senior Bowl or maybe shortly after that. I don't remember the exact timing. So watching him in that matchup, and I'd watched Bailey torch a few dudes right before that, he had some good reps against them. They probably had 25, 30, 35 head-to-heads during that game. I don't remember the exact number. Bailey would flip a little, but, looked the part. And I know he's played both tackle spots. I think right tackle seems a little more likely for Max. At the Senior Bowl, I felt like day one, he was just okay. Day two was really good, and day three was good also. And so I think he helped himself down there. Remember, he's only played football for like 4 or 5 years. It's not, he's really he's new to the sport. So yeah, but 6'6", 325 pounds, running a 4.9, those kind of soccer feet that he learned growing up. He was a soccer and a basketball player, born in, I think, Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. So good arm length. I think the mental part of it is going to be interesting just because, so many of these guys have been like bathed in football and protections and understand footwork and hand placement and independent hands and weight transfer and undersetting, oversetting, and not to do those, and how to get into the guy's pads and all these little tricks you pick up. He doesn't really have all those tools at his disposal. Even with the sound off, watching him and Vrabel go at it in the pro day, you could tell that Mike was like, okay, do it this way, kind of like, I think if the Patriots or any team at the bottom of round one took him, they'd have to know if you're counting on him to start day one, you better be prepared to throw some help his way. And that's the way it's going to be. But I'd be fascinated to see what he could be in a couple years. Like, I think his long-term ceiling is better than Caleb Lomu or any other tackles you're going to get in the late first, early second. So for me, it's taking a little bit of a risk because I know that he's not there yet, but I'm kind of intrigued.
Yeah, with this O-line group, again, becomes another one of those where, again, Maui Goa, safe, solid, you know exactly where you're going to get, really clean. Again, the Georgia kid, Freeling, he's, again, maybe looking at that top-end ceiling. All of a sudden, he's looking really nice.
He's going high, yeah.
You've got Fano, you've got Lomu, you've got Caden Proctor, where,
Right.
man, I'd imagine these guys' grades have got to be all over the place on these, where, again, in some years, it's like, yeah, consensus 1 through 5, we're just going to find out, again, who's picking them 1 through 5. This group, it just seems to be all over the place with, again, where they're going to go, who likes them, who doesn't like them, where they're going to end up. Is that about right?
Yeah, I'm with you. The arm length question with Spencer Fano. I had one scout kind of refer to him as a 5-position player, and then to me that's a good thing. It's nice that if he doesn't work at left tackle, you can try him other spots or whatever. But I almost took it as like a little bit of a backhanded compliment in a way. Obviously people kind of said that about Will Campbell last year. Like, if he doesn't work at tackle, you can play him at guard. You can try him at center. He'd probably be a great center. He'd probably dominate there. But what's the most important spot that he could play above replacement level football at? And I think that's maybe the worry with him a little. So yeah, Maui Noah, I think is he ever going to be an elite pass protector is the only real question with him. And is he strictly a right tackle guard type, or can you play him on the left side? Blake Miller, I feel like he's just like the steadiest of the group, but another kind of right tackle, central casting guy. He started a ton of games. There's nothing sexy about him. He's the one who's probably got the most similar grades, I would say, of the group. Maybe Maui Noah too, but the rest, Proctor, some teams are going to love him. They love the big dancing bear type. Some teams are going to say, not for us. We're a zone team. We need quick guys. I could see Freeling, his experience being a problem for some teams, the off the charts potential being a gem for others. The Browns could take him, almost like a Colton Miller type of player or something like that. You could see it. But Lomu hasn't really excited me that much. And there's a drop off after that. I just feel like there's going to be 8 tackles in round 1 or 8 tackles in the first 35 picks anyway. I just think that those 8 are in a different tier than what you see below that.
So 34 offensive linemen drafted rounds 1 through 7 last year, 8 in the first round. Does the total number of O-linemen go over or under 8 this year, you think?
I think it's over. I think with Ioane and boy, I don't know that there's another true guard. Like, obviously one of these guys could be moved inside, but I think it's going to end up being either 8 or 9. That's my guess.
Well, that's a bit of a hedge because I said over or under
Right.
8. But again, we're not going to hold you to it 8 or 9.
You didn't offer me 8.5. If you said that or, whatever, I might have. Then
no,
I couldn't.
It's all good. Again, we're seeing teams go in the trenches, O-line, D-line, fully expect it. And again, our last player question, again, Ruben Bain, all the questions on the arm length. Everybody that I talked to said, yeah, it's not a surprise. Again, scouts, not surprised at all. Everybody knew he was going to have short arms, and yet put on the tape, this guy beat everybody. But he's also got a teammate in Akeem Mesidor who was really good. Has checked every box through this process as well. Is there any chance Mesidor goes before Bain, or is Bain still a solid top 10 pick without question?
I'm gonna say there's minimal at best. I really can't see it because if Akeem Mesidor was 23 and had a relatively clean injury history, then I don't think we're on narrative street here. I think we're actually talking. We're like, let's have a discussion here, right? He's damn good. There were times when he was the more consistent rusher, but Bain there weren't many. I think he's pretty special. And, I know the Bill Parcells, you don't want a team of exceptions and all that and outliers. They're scary. I've been bit by him before in my projections, but I'll take him. I I love it. I don't know if he's Dwight Freeney, but man, the dude can get to the quarterback. He's just got a knack for it. He's built low to the ground. Team set. I never saw his arm length give him trouble like consistently. I just felt like he was so disruptive and so instinctively good at getting into the quarterback that you can reduce him inside. He's got a thick frame. You can do a lot with him, and he doesn't have to just strictly be the Bailey edge rusher.
With that, where do you think Mesidor ends up going? Because again, he has certainly, it was easy to talk about Reuben Bain all year. Again, it was Reuben Bain. That defensive front gave everybody they played fit. Mesidor was a big part of that. Obviously, more questions. Does Mesidor make it top 20? Does he stay in the first round? Or are there enough questions that, hey, this could be a little bit of a slide for him?
I think it's maybe one of those mock draft slides where like he goes a little lower than people doing a lot of mocks, including myself, expect because of the age question. He's almost 25, or he's going to be 25 here shortly. So, you're pretty much capped out athletically. Again, not saying that you can't improve or make strength gains or quickness and all that, but there's not a whole lot of growth typically after the age of 25, and you're second contract, you're going to be 30 years old if you're a first round pick. I mean, that's it's just unusual. You don't see prospects that old unless they're a quarterback or something unusual. But I think he'll end up somewhere in the back quarter, that 25 to 32 range. If I had to guess, maybe it's a little sooner, maybe it's a little later, but if I had to like pick one little area of the draft, at some point people are going to say we need pass rushers, and I'll be willing to take the risk a little bit.
Yeah, again, Reuben Bain, another just good football player. You get better. You like the high floor, and whatever the ceiling is, he's going to give you good quality snaps. That wraps up the trenches. We got one more quarterback that we haven't hit on. Again, one for sure in the first round. Are we going to get a second? And Neil, Ty Simpson is the guy. What do you want to ask about Ty Simpson?
My question on Simpson is this, Eric. Is he a product of a shortage of quarterbacks this year? It sounds like you have come down on him as a day one guy. Fair enough. Is it because there's so many needs and so few really kind of elite type quarterbacks this year? Is he benefiting, I guess, from this year's draft class, and they'll probably go day one?
I think he is. I think he's definitely better. That doesn't negate him as a prospect. I just think that he fits in nicely as a potential plan B, for teams like the Jets, like the Browns, like the Cardinals, like the other ones who haven't scooped up a quarterback. And I think the discussion probably begins sort of in that Mesidor area, I guess, the 25th pick and on, right? I mean, I'm somewhere around there. I don't know that Pittsburgh is interested at 21. I don't know. The Browns have a second first rounder. The Jets have a second one above that. They also pick 33rd. The Cardinals pick 34th. The Jets have more ammunition than anybody next year, this year. They can throw whatever offer they want. If they like the guy, they can get him. There's no problem. They could draft him at 16. They could trade back in round one and get him. It's going to be like one of those handful of teams I think I mentioned. The prospect has his share of warts. I mean, Simpson looked good early, got hurt, didn't look as good. He's not a big kid, doesn't have a wow arm, but he made some wow throws, I would say. You look at some of those games, man, especially in the first 7, 8, 9 games of the season before he started taking a beating, and it was pretty impressive. But 15 games, a little light for me. I would have loved to see one more year from him. But yeah, I think if it's not, I'd be shocked if he got past 33, because if not, Arizona would take him at 34 if I had to guess. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of that late first or right away in round 2.
Yep. Now he had a unique story in today's game in that he stuck around, bided his time.
He did.
Played. Took advantage of his 1 year as a starter. Is that a positive or a negative to you, Eric?
Good question. Boy, my instinct is to say it's a positive, but I could see how some people like Jadarian Price, people are like, why didn't you transfer? Ted Hurst to Georgia State. Why didn't you transfer? Well, some people like where they're at. I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. Do you guys have strong feelings on that? Like a guy sticking around to wait his turn it could theoretically be held against him?
I just think that if he had transferred, and I love the guy who's loyal and works his way up and all those kind of things, but I think if he transfers, he would have 2 years of tape. Now, maybe those wouldn't be great years of tape. Maybe
Sure.
now I think the league would know more about him. I don't know that
They
it is
would.
better for Clyde Simpson that he would have 2 years of starting tape, but I guess that's kind of where it all hedges right there. Is he probably would have gone somewhere else and had a better chance to be a bit more established. We don't know what he would be. Maybe he established as a day 3 guy at that point. It's really
That's the
hard to say.
risk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
always
again.
like the Bears saw more in Mitch Trubisky in 13 games from him than they did in 29 games of Deshaun Watson or 30 whatever of Patrick Mahomes. And go somewhere else, your flaws get exposed sometimes.
Yeah. Again, you Alabama. Again, you give the benefit of the doubt. Yeah,
Right.
that's a program that churns them out one way or another. There's programs that, yeah, you're fine if you're Ty Simpson sticking around. There's others I'm not going to say because I don't want to throw shade at anybody. There's other programs, if you're not starting there, it's like, all right, why'd you stick around? Like, what's the real reason? So again, all part of the reason scouts get paid to do their work while they're
Right.
having conversations, all their April meetings. Again, conversations are certainly happening this week, and just like we're having here. But Eric, it has been awesome. Your top 100 is coming out soon. Make sure everybody checks those out. They'll be on Twitter. They'll be posted up everywhere at Eric_Edholm. Are you headed to Pittsburgh for the draft? Are you going to be sitting at home? What does the draft night look like for you?
Yeah, no, I've done the in-person thing a few times, and I actually kind of like it. It's cool being. I was in Detroit, and it was fun to see downtown. The whole downtown smelled like weed. Like everybody was out partying, and it was like, wow, man, for the draft, okay. I guess I got a job for another couple of years, But no, I haven't been the last couple, and I will be at home. I love Pittsburgh. I would, if you've never made that walk over that bridge. You get to see the baseball stadium in Heinz or whatever they call Acrisure Field now. And it's a beautiful downtown area and that river section there. And it'll be, I think it'll be outstanding for the draft and great football town, but sadly I will not be there.
Awesome. Well, we will be looking for all the content you put out, including that top 100. So make sure you go check it out. Follow Eric if you're not already. But Eric, really appreciate you being on with us.
My pleasure. Talk to you guys soon.
Oh, it's fun. Thanks, sir.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file folder storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.